The Macabre Tavern Museum of Mayhem covers subjects that are of a sensitive nature. Many themes involve murder and cannibalism. Viewer discretion is always advised. This famous video was taken during World War II. A young naval pilot is pulled from the Pacific Ocean after being shot down by the Japanese during an attack on Chickajima. That pilot's name was George Herbert Walker Bush. He would later become the 41st President of the United States. However, those he flew with that day suffered a much different fate. This is the island of Chickajima. It's roughly located 700 miles from Tokyo and is in the Bonin Islands. This island was a strategic supply point for Japanese previous to the Battle of Iwo Jima. The island was also the primary site for long-range communications between Tokyo and the Osagara Islands. It was rumored that 3,700 to 3,800 men were stationed on Chickajima on the day of the Pearl Harbor attacks. It also had one of the heaviest garrisons in Japan because it was a priority target. The American Navy took many attempts to take the island. All failed. In September of 1944, the United States Navy would begin another raid on the island. 9 airmen and their crews would take off for the island to bomb mostly communications targets, including their long-range radios. However, once over the island, all 9 would be shot down. But only Bush, who was piloting a 3-man Avenger dive bomber, would continue to fly his plane out to sea, crash in the Pacific. Later, he would be rescued by the submarine USS Finback. However, his 2 crewmates in the 3-man plane died. One did not make it out of the plane in time when it crashed into the water, while the other's chute failed to open. Yet there were other 8 airmen in their crew. Lloyd Wolof, Grady York, James Jimmy Dye, Glenn Frazier Jr., Marv Merson, Lloyd Hall, Warren Earl Vaughn, and Warren Hindenlag were captured and eventually executed along with their crew. The airmen and the crews did not survive long. One example of what the men faced after capture was a radio operator marched to a freshly dug grave, blindfolded, and was then beheaded. Others were killed with sharpened bamboo points or bayonets. While getting drunk, General Yoshio Chichibana made the suggestion that one of the airmen have his flesh consumed. He challenged his men to see if they had the fighting spirit to eat a human body. 4 airmen were executed specifically for this purpose. Surgeons would remove the liver and thigh muscles of the airmen. Then they would be cooked with soy sauce and vegetables, along with hot sake. Admiral Kenzo Mori later testified that a chef, quote, had the liver pierced with bamboo sticks and cooked with soy sauce and vegetables. The fate of the airmen were never known to their families, as the United States military classified their deaths as top secret. The island was never captured during the war. Over 25,000 Japanese soldiers surrendered on the islands when Japan formally surrendered in 1945. A year later, 11 men, including Chichibana, were court-martialed for Class B war crimes. This included murder and the prevention of an honorable burial, since there were no statutes on cannibalism. All 11 were convicted and sentenced to death by hanging. Vice Admiral Mori Kunzio, who commanded the Chichijima Air Base at the time of the incident, of the belief that the consumption of human liver had medical benefits. Initially, he was sentenced to life imprisonment for his involvement in the incident. However, after many subordinates were convicted of slaughtering prisoners during their time on the Southern Front, he was sentenced to death and subsequently hanged in a separate trial organized by the Netherlands for war crimes committed in the Dutch East Indies. Even Bush was not privy to the fate of his comrades until the book Flyboys, a true story of courage, was written by James Bradley in 2003. After the war, Bush was given the Distinguished Flying Cross and would use the footage of his rescue in his 1988 presidential campaign against Michael Dukakis. The island was occupied by the United States from 1945 to 1968 and was returned that year.